I'm the dude. So that's what you call me.
Are you a virgin?
Yeah, not since I was 10.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Come to the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Can I return it if it doesn't fit?
It always fits. Eventually.
Hey everybody, it's Maggie and Caveman here at Movie Mingle, the podcast where we go through the top 75 films on Letterboxd, and today we're talking about Interstellar, which is our 7th movie so far. Can you believe it? 7 already?
7 already. Interstellar, our first Nolan film.
Our first Christopher Nolan film, yeah. We are coming up here eventually on what we've been quietly describing as Nolan Fest, where eventually we'll be going through 3 of his movies in the course of a couple weeks. But for right now, we're talking about Interstellar, the absolutely fantastic movie about love and space.
Yes, and a lot of gravity.
So much gravity.
So, Interstellar came out in 2014, directed by Christopher Nolan, of course, and written by, or with his brother Jonathan Nolan. One of the first things that he got to write for Christopher Nolan was the original short story, Memento Mori, that later became Memento. He's also been credited as doing one of my favorite HBO television shows, which was Westworld.
Favorite even at the end there?
I was really enjoying it. Yes, there were some seasons in the middle that were a little iffy, but overall, I was really enjoying it and was crushed when not only they canceled it, but completely erased it from HBO.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Matthew McConaughey Goes to Space. Oh, space, oh, space, oh, space.
All right.
So Interstellar is about, essentially, when the Earth becomes uninhabitable in the future. A farmer and ex-NASA pilot, Joseph Cooper, which I don't... Like, they call him Coop or Cooper so much, I don't think I even caught that his first name is Joseph.
No, I only clocked that when I was looking on IMDb.
He doesn't look like a Joseph.
No, he doesn't. He looks like a Coop.
He looks like a Cooper.
Cooper.
Oh, Cooper. He's tasked to pilot a spacecraft along with a team of researchers to find a new planet for humans.
That is the nuts and bones of it, and man, does it get crazy from there.
The movie, of course, stars Matthew McConaughey, and also Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, John Lithgow, and Michael Caine are at least part of the main cast. There's many others later in the movie, but we'll get to them.
I am Michael Caine. No, what? Where's my Michael Caine? Michael Caine.
Michael.
No, it's going to come to me at some point during the podcast. Michael Caine accent. Hello, I am Michael Caine.
One of the favorite things I ever heard Michael Caine say was in Austin Powers, where he has a line that says, "There are 2 things in the world that I hate the most. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch." And coming from Michael Caine, coming from a acting legend as Michael Caine, saying a dumb line like that just makes me giggle every time. So it's no surprise that it won 44 awards and was nominated for 5 Oscars, but it only won a single Oscar.
I'm kind of shocked by... I mean, like, I know I didn't win sound design, but I am kind of shocked that that none of the acting was up for any Oscars.
The 5 nominations that it received were for original score for Hans Zimmer, which
it should have won.
I don't know what the other movies were that were nominated that year.
So I actually looked this up really late last night.
I can't wait to hear.
Okay. Do you want to hear it now?
I do.
Okay. So,
Let's just say it.
Alexander Desplat,
yeah,
was nominated twice that year for the Grand Budapest Hotel and something else. But ultimately, the Grand Budapest Hotel won for Best Original Score. And then the rest were kind of, inconsequential.
Compared to Hans Zimmer.
To Hans Zimmer and Alexander Desplat. I've only seen the Grand Budapest Hotel once, and I remember it being super fucking charming, but I don't remember the music.
Times, so I don't remember the music specifically.
No. We are going to have to watch it eventually.
It is on the list,
soon.
And so when we get to it, we will compare that score to this one.
Yeah, but I mean,
This one is amazing.
oh my god. The music in this movie is so anxiety ridden. The ticking clock that he uses to show the passage of time on Earth versus the passage of time in space, like, it cannot be denied that the music in this movie is fucking phenomenal, and there's no person on this planet that could have done it like Hans Zimmer.
I remember watching a short kind of making of, I don't remember if it was on the Interstellar Blu-ray special features or if it was something I found on YouTube or the TV somehow, but it was a short behind the scenes with Hans Zimmer. He was looking at this church's massive pipe organ, and he plays around on it, which, first of all, it's really cool to see him fool around on a pipe organ. But he shows some things that they did to capture the sound of Interstellar, create a lot of the noise and music that you hear in the movie. Was nominated for a couple of other Oscars that included sound mixing and sound editing, which was back when the Academy Awards had those two separate nominations every year, and now it's just been combined into one sound design. You know, we mentioned this while we were watching the film. Sometimes you can't hear the sound designs. The music is so overpowering the entire film that sometimes the sound design is completely wasted and could have been a reason why it was only nominated for an Oscar instead of winning anything, because when you could hear the sound design of doors opening and closing, the rocket taking off, landing, some really good sound design was used, just you couldn't hear it that often. I know Nolan he doesn't record his actors later with ADR. He generally records them on set, and then that's the recording they stay with, which is why a lot of times dialogue in his films is very quiet.
Well, from what I was reading, Christopher Nolan said that the reason that the sound design is so screwy is on purpose. Nothing in
that's
his...
what he says all the time. He
Well, yeah,
always says that. He does it on purpose.
Yeah, nothing in his film is ever, or in any of his films, are ever by accident. So he wanted you to not be able to hear some dialogue and some sound design. He wanted the music to take over, the noise of the ship take over. Like, he wanted it to be more real, I guess, which on the one hand is genius and on the other hand is super pretentious.
When your movie rests on dialogue,
Which this movie rests on a lot of clunky exposition, yeah.
I mean, Tenet alone, I don't think I understood a single word that was spoken, let alone what I was seeing, but that's a whole nother
We did end up putting
film.
Subtitles on to watch this film, and I think that it helped greatly.
Subtitles on definitely helped my experience with this film. So one Oscar that Interstellar did get to walk away with that night was for visual effects. Sure. Yeah, amazing.
Like, how could it not have? For God's sakes, they recreated before scientists were ever able to fully visualize a black hole. Fucking Chris Nolan was able to get a bunch of science nerds and do it.
Based off of all the information we knew about black holes and their description of what it would look like, they were able to visualize that in this movie. Yeah. For the first time, scientists even got to see what they had only imagined in theory. This is all based in theory. And then
a couple years later, they released the first photo of a black hole.
Black hole, and it was
very
extremely similar.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same, but very, very
and so beautiful. I cried when I saw that picture for the first time. I thought, I'm a secret space nerd. It's not something that I do a lot of research about or stuff, but I love space programs. And one time I met a real life astronaut, and it was the only time I ever couldn't keep my cool around a celebrity, because this woman had been to space. She'd been to space twice. She was more Princess Leia than I will ever be, and I told her that, and she went, thanks. Oh, the day that I met a female astronaut, I lost my goddamn mind because I love space. I would never go there. Spice. But, man, I love space. And so anytime... I love spice. Anytime any of the James Webb's photos come out, I just stare at them for ages and think about what life is like in those galaxies. It's so pretty. This movie is so pretty. And it made me cry 5 times. Just getting this out there, because my friends have teased me about how often I talk about movies making me cry, Interstellar fucking broke me. In fact, it broke me so hard the first time I watched it, I vowed to never watch it again. And then I had to watch it yesterday.
Welcome to this podcast.
Welcome to this podcast. So I wasn't necessarily looking forward to watching Interstellar again. All I remember is just the agony of this film, just that it was beautiful and it was big, but it was too much and too many emotions, and I didn't want to be broken in that way. But honestly, I'm glad that we watched it again, because I really got to, like, settle in and remember things that I had forgotten about this film and just enjoy the story, and then be absolutely gutted by the end of it. Because, oh boy, this movie.
Well, at the beginning of the movie, I really like the documentary style exposition that they're able to create to get you to know what the world on Earth, what life on Earth is like.
In
what
2067.
2067.
That's 43 years
right
from
around
now.
the corner from now.
Yeah, which shit's about to get bleak.
But I liked it was a creative way to do exposition without just throwing up a bunch of exposition at us.
Most of that footage, except for the scenes that Ellen Burstyn are in, it was taken from a Ken Burns documentary about the Dust Bowl. So all those old people talking about all the dust in the air and everything were actually survivors of the Depression and the Dust Bowl that hit during that time. And Christopher Nolan reached out to Ken Burns to ask if he could use that footage in his film, and Ken Burns was like, hell yeah. So it is, real people talking about real experiences, which then adds to...
It adds to the realism of the film, too, because you hear something like that, the documentary feels so real, which obviously it was, just from some other part in history.
They had an astrophysicist by the name of Dr. Kip Thorne, who insisted that nothing would violate the established physical laws, and that all wild speculations would spring from science and not from...
sci-fi,
from the screenwriter, basically.
Sure.
So they had proper scientists helping along with this movie to make it feel real, to make everything be as accurate as possible, which I think leads to the beauty of it. Of course, it leads to the realism of the film, but for all pretense and purpose, these things could actually happen. Like, I hope that we don't end up eating only corn one day, because I cannot imagine what it would do to your digestive tract. Oh boy.
Oh boy. I mean, they talk about blight is pretty much destroying their food supply.
Yeah, that there's the only crops that you can grow anymore, basically corn, like okra's gone, wheat's gone.
Yeah, wheat's...
They don't ever mention anything about, like, livestock, but I imagine that that's probably long gone,
Livestock's
too.
probably gone, because they didn't talk about nobody ate a meat, like, even John Lithgow's character talks about eating hot dogs at a
missing
Yankees
hot dogs,
game.
because you're right, if there's no food
for humans,
if there's no food for humans, there's gonna be
no food for animals or livestock to feed the humans.
Yeah, there's no, like, dogs in this film.
We're gonna eat what the animals are eating before we starve.
But yeah, seriously, a diet of just corn will wreck your colon. So
I was
super.
I was very surprised to see Timothée Chalamet in this movie.
Baby Timothée Chalamet.
The last time I saw this movie was before he really became who he is today.
Yeah, it was definitely pre-Dune. The last time we watched this film, or the first time we watched this film, was pre-Dune. So that would, and that's kind of where, well, no, I think I started to clock in on him, like, before that.
He's been doing movies for quite a while in between this and Dune.
But this is the one that you kind of forget about, because he's only in it for a few short minutes.
Yeah.
We watched the honest trailers for Interstellar last night. And then we watched a couple other, videos about Interstellar, and they all brought up the fact that, like, Coop really fucking loves his daughter and tolerates...
And his son is there.
And his son is there, yeah. It's not that he tolerates him. He loves his son, too, very much, but...
Like, son, you're
a
good
man
enough
now
to be a farmer, so be a farmer.
Yeah, and take care of the place. Murph, save the goddamn world.
You are a genius, and you love science. And
let's go find this hidden NASA base together. Let's figure out.
Let's go change
physics.
The world for mankind, for humankind.
Let's go fix gravity. Yeah, together.
let's. Yeah.
Tom, go grow some fucking corn. Another funny thing about this movie is that John Lithgow is a millennial. He's one of us now, living in this bleak ass future.
Went from boomer to millennial. How do you like that, Lithgow?
But if you think about it, I mean, obviously this world is going through a horrible climate change problem. It's not being addressed properly. It's, the governments and businesses are putting it on the people, but in reality they're the ones that are screwing everything up the most. Like, it's not great. So this is a potential future that you and I could witness. I mean, our children could be Coop's generation.
It's interesting because food supply was running out because of the blight. It's interesting that the government had to force, or not force, but to keep people from wanting to explore space to save themselves. They had to rewrite their own history. They had to say the moon landing was faked so that people wouldn't have a desire for space travel.
Which
is
insane.
And then the government wouldn't have to spend any money on any kind of space travel.
Yeah.
And
they
then
shut down
food
the
and
military.
resources are more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And military's gone. We just need food.
This movie shows what people can do, both from the range of stupid and terrible, all the way up to magnificent and world-saving. It shows humanity in a very honest way. It shows how low people can get. It shows how selfish people can get. It shows how bleak and dumb people can be and how cowardly and evil people can be versus, also showing the best of us, what can be done through love, what can be done through science, what can be done through perseverance. So, it's it's just a very human movie, but it shows all of our fault and all of our greatness. How is gas still a thing? You see cars driving a lot. Are they all electric cars, or
they don't address that?
No, they don't.
They could be electric, sure. Why not?
And that bothered me. They have self-driving tractors, for God's sake.
They do.
So why
they have
wouldn't
self-driving
they have electric trucks that actually look decent?
Yeah, they don't even attempt. Even in 2067 or whatever it's supposed to be, they don't even attempt to make the vehicles futuristic or put some solar panels on the top, or any kind of. You could even just have a prop guy put a thing on the roof and be like, "This is how we get our power now," and we as an audience are just like, "Okay,
yeah, but
makes sense."
Didn't. I mean, I guess I'm glad it's almost a 3-hour movie. I'm glad they didn't try to explain that on top of everything else. But that was something that I was thinking.
I mean, fuel has to be coming from somewhere in order to get these massive ships in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, they launched
a spaceship.
They launched a spaceship towards the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, the fuel has to come from somewhere.
Fuel's coming from somewhere. So they must. Food resources are bad, but those oil businesses are still thriving.
They will never go away. I was thinking that while we were watching Coop and Murph go on their little adventure trying to find. They find coordinates.
That could have easily been a wild goose chase, and that would have been a lot of gas wasted.
What we haven't talked about is the ghost that lives in Murph's bedroom. So Murph has this giant full-wall bookshelf that things keep falling off of, and she suspects that it's caused by a ghost. And of course, like every parent of an 11-year-old, they're like, really? A ghost? Really? Like, settle down there, kid. But things are happening, and the books that are being pushed off, there's a pattern to them. So Murph spends a lot of time trying to understand what this pattern is. And then after a particularly devastating dust storm, Cooper finds that the patterns of the sand on the floor are spelling out or somehow arrange out coordinates.
Yeah, it's a binary. Like thick are ones and thin is zeros or something like that.
Yeah, so it's
based
in
off of
binary.
The pattern. It's a binary pattern that shows coordinates.
And so they go to check out those coordinates, only to find a secret NORAD/NASA base. Because even though the people were told that the government shut down NASA, science nerds will find a way. And of course NASA is still around.
Which I like when we're introduced to NASA. When you're first introduced to them, you think they're like FBI, CIA,
some sort of
some
like
black
secret government.
secret black site. TARS is a decommissioned military robot. And
TARS, who is the most precious baby.
Oh my goodness, he's
my beloved.
He's a mixture of C-3PO And I mean, he's a mixture of a lot of different sci-fi robots.
He is soft, sweet boy.
Probably the best humor in any Christopher Nolan film.
Well, yeah, because Christopher Nolan wrote a sassy robot. We get a sassy robot written by Christopher Nolan, and he is, of course, absolute perfection. TARS and Case are real homeboys. They're the true MVPs of this movie. Let's throw it out to our robot homies.
Everybody good? Plenty of slaves for my robot colony?
What's your humor setting, Tars?
That's 100%.
Let's bring it on down to 75, please.
So the tension is being built quite a lot, especially when Coop tries to break the lock open.
Yeah, he's separated by his
separated
kid.
from his daughter, and
Yeah.
you think that he's thinking the worst. You're thinking the worst as an audience, and then later on, Anne Hathaway is just like, "Hey, we're NASA."
We're NASA.
And I was like, Jesus,
Because, of
NASA's
course-
gotten dark.
Well, NASA's gone dark. Like I said, of course science nerds will find a way to always be science nerds, and they'll find the money and they'll find the means to still figure out and still explore. Because that's another theme of this movie, is that all these explorers still exist, and Matthew McConaughey's character he's got that explorer blood in him, he's a test pilot. He wants to go to space. He wants to find out what's next, but he is now stuck on Earth doing this, menial task that is failing, but that need to go out and explore is driving him forward.
Not only is he a science nerd because he's a pilot and because he has the knowledge of a scientist, but then he's even such a nerd that he knows Morse code to communicate on the watch and binary to communicate with gravity and dust.
Yeah, and all the time while looking like Matthew McConaughey, just Texas's most perfect everyman. So, yeah, I stand. I'm here for it.
I just have to say, I too have written out coordinates in binary because I am also a huge nerd.
Jesus Christ.
I one time posted a QR code in my work break room that when you scanned it, it would show you a binary message. And if you were to figure out the binary message, it essentially told you the longitude and latitude of one of my favorite eateries that's local to my work.
Such a nerd. And that's why I love you. God damn it, I love you so much, you giant freak. Can we talk about the people bomb that NASA has planned? So NASA, in a way of trying to save the planet, has two options. NASA discovers this wormhole, and they discover that the planets, if you were to go through the wormhole, the planets on the other side, could possibly sustain human life. And they originally sent out 13 astronauts, and to go through
One for each planet
to go through this planet, or go through this wormhole, to try to see which planet was habitable.
Plan A is pretty much the 13 astronauts go to their planets.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever has the best viable, like, this is a place to check out for sure.
Yeah.
They send a beacon saying, come here.
Yeah.
And if you don't find a planet that's habitable, don't send out your beacon. It's a one-way trip. It's a suicide mission. And then plan B is to people bomb.
Yeah, is to find, said planet and
if nobody makes it. Plan B is if the humans on Earth can't get off Earth.
Yes.
Then we're just going to people bomb this new planet.
Yeah, with somewhere around, I think they said 500,000 embryos, basically. But here's my thought.
Like freeze-dried embryos.
Crunchy. Here's my thought. Who's going to raise the little fuckers? Who's going to help incubate and raise and teach all of those children? Because they're embryos. They're not full-blown people. Yeah, okay, so they'll be smart.
And Hathaway's going to teach all these kids.
But here's the second thing.
Okay.
Where the hell did they get all of those eggs and all that sperm to create all of these embryos? Right? Did they just go raid a sperm bank? And if so, did they really want to trust, air quotes, NASA scientists, and air quotes, that actually use sperm banks? Like, where did they get the sperm? And it's harder to get eggs. It is so much harder to harvest a fertile egg out of a human being than it is to get sperm. So I have questions that doesn't answer.
Maybe some kind of government
conspiracy. Every time you go in and get a pap smear, they pop an egg out. Like,
I'm sure there was a certain time, it could have been in the 2040s, the 2050s, where they're like, we need to start
collecting
things? Some stuff.
Yeah, but did people sign off on that, or do they even know?
I mean, what if, I don't know, what if there was a monetary incentive?
Well, yeah,
when
we'll give you more food.
More food, yeah, food
know.
for sperm.
Food.
Food
Yes,
for
but then
eggs.
you can't trust the people who are donating that sperm.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot,
It's obvious.
There's a lot of time and there's a lot of time to burn in this place
to
and,
weed out
yeah,
the worst of them.
NASA,
Like NASA
just
your
going over
neighbor
every
Vern?
embryo, every sperm, every egg. Just
your neighbor Vern down the street, who didn't graduate from middle school, is out there, giving his sperm for some chicken, and they want to use that to repopulate another planet. I'm just saying that was a flawed system. So one of the lines that Matthew McConaughey mumbles through this movie is, mankind was born on Earth, but it wasn't meant to die there. Do we believe that? Do we believe that our future as human beings is in the stars?
has that always been like the hope of mankind, is to not live on Earth anymore?
Well, I don't think that's the hope. I think it's the reality of what we're doing to this planet. And in order to survive, we either need to change our ways, which we won't do. Let's be honest. We're not going to change our ways. And so do we just accept the planet finally giving out on us, or do we reach to the stars and try to get out there to survive? I mean, NASA and space agencies all across the world are always looking for habitable planets, but I think that's just more to find whether or not we're alone in this world.
Sure.
But, oftentimes they're like, oh, here's this planet that's 10 light years away that, could possibly,
Yeah, we discovered water on this planet.
Yeah,
it's
so
always
it
a
could
possibility that something could.
Earth.
If you think about it, especially Murphy's Law,
Mm-hmm.
wink, wink. Anything that can happen will happen. So the possibilities of another habitable planet like Earth being out there is, of course, possible in an infinite space.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they were already secretly working on a path to colonize that. But then,
they're already working on seeing what they could do to the moon, Mars.
Yeah, they want to put people on Mars, which coincidentally is another Matt Damon stranded in space movie. I will say that the cry count begins at, the first time I cried in this movie was when Matthew McConaughey leaves his kids. And Coop is leaving Murph, and Murph doesn't want him to go. She's super angry at him for leaving. She realizes, I think that she knows in her soul that he's not coming back, despite the fact that he promises her to come back. And she's not having it, which is, I guess, an understandable reaction. Not every story is about a child or a person accepting this big trip or this big mission that their loved one has to go on, and she is vehemently against it. And as he is going to leave, there are a bunch of books falling off the shelf, and she tells him that she cracked the code and that what the ghost is trying to say is stay.
Which we later find out is what the ghost
that's what the ghost
was saying, stay.
But
and it's funny that he himself is telling his past self to stay, even though he knows that version of him completely ignores his daughter.
Yeah.
And goes anyway.
But he has to try.
Which we already talked about this in Everything Everywhere All at Once, about the lengths at which you would go to save your children. That would include burning the world to the ground. Now, would you, Maggie, be able to leave your kids to save the world?
I mean, I don't think that I would, because I'm nothing special.
But he said the same thing about himself.
But he is an actual NASA-trained pilot.
I know.
And a scientist.
This isn't a literal question. It's more of...
and I'm not that smart.
Hypothetically, Maggie, if somebody said, you need to do this that will keep you from seeing your kids until, you may only see one of them later in the future when they are about to die, but at the same time you're saving the entire planet or mankind or humankind.
I mean, I think the answer is yes. You have to, God damn you for this question. What about you, Caveman? We share the same children.
No, this is for you because...
Yeah, of course I would go if I had to. If for some reason me leaving this earth meant that my children would thrive and survive on it, of course I would go. I would be pissed about it. You do what you have to protect your kids. I mean, there's that line about once you're a parent, you're the ghost of your kid's future. Don't think that didn't fucking break me open. The idea that right now we're just making memories for our children when we're gone, like, that hurts. But yeah, if it meant, for Coop, protecting his children meant not telling them that the world was going to end. And for me, if it meant blasting off to fucking Mars to live there for the rest of my days while my children got to live happy lives down here, then yeah, I would do it. But I would be fucking pissed about it. I would complain every step of the way.
I never knew that the theory of relativity could be so mind-bendy and just screw with your head in a visual way. Just to see how somebody can orbit a planet for 23 years while it's only been a couple hours for a couple other people, just because of how time is relative. And seeing it represented in a film, that makes it a little bit easier to understand, but still just kind of blows over your head. Like, okay, I trust you guys that this is science.
Really quickly, the bromance that we never knew that we needed, and I don't think I've ever gotten before, which was seeing John Lithgow and Michael Caine on screen together.
Oh, I wish they had got more scenes together.
Me too, because somehow seeing those two interact just made me go, aww.
Like, oh, John Lithgow and Michael Caine,
like,
I want to see more of that.
One of America's greatest actors and one of Britain's greatest actors together. Thanks, Christopher Nolan. We appreciate that. I also liked that for all of the tech in the movie, all the advancement in technology, all the incredible, incredible things that man was able to create in order to get these people in space and through a wormhole into another universe, they still decided that wired headphones are the best. So take that, earbuds. Wired earphones will always be the best pinnacle of that technology.
I love wired headphones.
Fucking love me some wired headphones.
Especially handy for podcasting.
I also really enjoyed the fact that once they're in space, Cooper uses nature sounds to help keep his team grounded. One of the team members is kind of freaking out about just what they're doing, the ship that they're in, and all of it, and what he does to help ground him as he plays him sounds of a rainstorm and nature. And I found that really beautiful because ultimately we are human beings. We are from planet Earth, and Earth is what grounds us. Hearing those noises is what makes us feel human again. And I can imagine that is very helpful when you're floating out past Saturn, about to enter a wormhole for the very first time. When they go through the wormhole, there is this incredible moment of Hans Zimmer music that's swelling, it's loud, it's, vibrating in your body, and it's absolutely beautiful as you see this ship entering a wormhole for the first time. But instead of them using only music and established shots of the ship from the outside, what they focus on is the inside of the cockpit and all of the creaks and cracks and bangs, whistles, bells, alarms, the astronauts kind of freaking out because they are now doing something that has only been done once before, and they don't know what it's going to be like. And I really enjoyed the sound design there, where instead of it being this sort of holy moment of beautiful Hans Zimmer music, it is just kind of scary and intense to hear the banging and to hear the ship rattling and to hear all the alarms going off because they can't detect a gravitational pull anymore. And all of this stuff happening, I just found really, really cool and interesting. And I thought that it was a very clever way of using sound, where you're kind of hearing what the characters would be hearing in the moment. You're not hearing some gorgeous movie-filled moment. Lesser directors would have just focused on music in that scene instead of the actual sound.
Or made it
design.
more smooth, like Star Wars or Star Trek, where it's just as simple as pressing a button.
Yeah, and it's quiet.
And you're off going light speed. But
this is a terrifying moment. You live in that terror for a minute, and I really appreciated that moment.
It's like the same thing happens when they land on their first planet with how vibrating, he has to do it so fast because he's trying to save time, but at the same time, like, yeah, the feeling of the ship noise and vibrations so aggressive that it sounds like the whole thing's going to fall apart, and if it does, that's it. Everybody's dead, mission's done. Yeah, mankind's gone.
That whole sequence, I don't think I breathed for that entire sequence when he's like, I need to feel what the air feels like in order to fly. That whole sequence.
I mean, it's like
I just sat there, just
that the whole sequence for that planet, especially with the ticking going on once they get out of their ship, but then taking off from the second planet. Those two scenes are just anxiety-driven.
No, this whole movie is a panic attack.
Just so tense. But man, seeing those visuals, which, oh my god, the visuals in this movie's
well worth the Oscar for sure.
When I saw this movie in IMAX,
which I'm so jealous of
when it came out, and those locked camera positions connected to the ship for the landing gear, connected to the side of the ship just to see the side of the ship traveling. You know, when the ship is spinning later, the whole sequence of it coming together. I love the use of models in this movie.
Oh, the use of models is something. I'm so glad. I am so glad that they built as many practical sets as they could, that they built models and used them as the basis of filming. I love that Christopher Nolan strapped a fucking IMAX camera to the cone of an airplane and sent it up into the stratosphere. That motherfucker, he's genius, and I love it.
And the shots pay off.
Also, just the fact that they used real locations. You know, like, it's not just all of these people standing in some dirt on the volume. They're actually in the desert. They're actually in Iceland. You know, they're in a big giant pool of water. They fucking grew all that corn. They grew all of that corn and
Just
then
to
sold
drive
it
through
for
it.
a profit.
That's right, they sold it
For a profit.
for a profit.
Like, you know, Christopher
forgot
Nolan
about
doesn't
that.
half-ass things, and that's why this movie is one of the greatest movies you'll ever see.
With the filmography that Christopher Nolan has built for himself, this movie is our first movie on our list from Letterboxd, and this is in order of 1 to 75. So this is ranked above all other Nolan films.
Yeah, like, this is higher than The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight is arguably one of the greatest movies ever fucking made, but this is also one of the greatest movies ever fucking made. I don't know offhand. I don't know if there are any other directors on this list that have as many films as Christopher Nolan does. So yeah, I think the only other director on here that has done
that gets close to Nolan
is Martin Scorsese. Like, Christopher Nolan is one of the world's greatest directors, and it shows.
The other surprising thing is, we'll get to it when we start doing Scorsese movies, but they also aren't the Scorsese movies that you think would be on the list.
It is so hard to watch Cooper and Annie Hath's, I forget what her character's name is.
Annie Hath's.
And it's watching them stuck on the wave planet, knowing that every minute that they spend there is another...
Every hour is 7 days, or every hour on the planet is 7 years on Earth.
Yeah, and so they know that they are stuck there because they're waiting for their engines to be unwaterlogged, to dry out.
Yeah.
And just the agony of that scene, them knowing that this mistake has cost them so much time, Anne Hathaway knowing that her mistake has cost them decades
Which
back
is
home.
why,
that scene is
she
so
made such a
heartbreaking.
big mistake in this first planet. That is why they don't trust her to go to the next planet that she thinks they should go to. She's saying that love is connecting me to this other planet, while Coop is saying, we'll lose less time if we go to this other planet, but we'll lose more if we go to yours. And she's like, no, you gotta trust me on this again. You have to trust me again, but this time I will be right.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we can't wait. We can't sacrifice the time for something that's not guaranteed.
That whole speech that she gives on love is...
Yeah. No, it's a great dialogue.
And again, I'm surprised she wasn't nominated for anything because, honestly, Anne Hathaway carries a lot of this film. Matthew McConaughey carries a lot of this film. Fucking Jessica Chastain carries a lot of this film.
I think Jessica Chastain's probably my favorite actor in this movie.
Yeah. When they get back from the water planet to find that 23 years has passed, and Cooper sits down to watch the videos from home, that is
so heartbreaking.
That is an agony that we didn't need. That 10 minutes could have been cut out of the film to save time, but it would have sacrificed so much heart.
The only thing that ruins that moment for me is because the shot of Matthew McConaughey's reaction while he's crying has been used in memes so much that now it's like, oh, it just makes me laugh more than
cry. I couldn't see that moment because I was too busy crying my fucking eyes out, Caveman. You saw how hard I was crying. And the funny thing is that afterwards you get a scene. This is when we see adult Murph for the first time, played by Jessica Chastain. And after all of that just torture and agony and everything that you watch this man go through, that you're feeling too, because at this point we're all, emotionally connected to these characters. After all of that, sobbing so hard, they cut to a scene where Michael Caine and Murph are like talking about, I honestly don't know because I was too busy recovering in that moment.
Well, speaking of what Michael Caine and Murph are always talking about...
I'm Michael Caine.
It's kind of a side B plot that I didn't really care for or think was needed. They could have come up with a whole nother reason why it'd be hard to transport humans to the new world. It could have been something as easy as like only so many things can go through the wormhole, or we only have one shot at getting people to the new world, so we need to know where it is before we do it. Because the whole, I'm solving this equation to solve for gravity and blah, 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 all this stuff and then Michael Caine's lying about the whole thing, and whole plot that I'm just like, just go back to Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff was unnecessary, but they needed, I almost feel like they needed some sort of soft landing for people to recover.
They never expected for Plan A to work.
Yeah,
they were always
going to never going to work.
They were always going to people bomb a planet
with what, inmates' babies? I still want to know.
Just babies crawling around, not knowing what to do. They didn't think past that. They're just like, at least the babies got there.
The babies got there.
And then because babies are dumb.
Yep.
That's it. Humans are gone.
Yeah.
Other than Jessica Chastain, we also get to see what adult Chalamet looks like, and Timothée Chalamet grows up to be Casey Affleck.
Bummer.
I know. Poor Chalamet.
Poor Chalamet.
He's like, wait a minute, who's playing me, the adult version of me?
No surprise that Casey Affleck is one of the biggest assholes in this movie. No surprise that Matt Damon, and Casey Affleck are the biggest assholes in this movie. I am not a fan of Casey Affleck for various reasons.
When Coop is up in space looking through all the footage that he's missed for the last 23 years, there's a lot of Casey Affleck character on screen.
Mm-hmm.
He's doesn't want to believe that his father's gone and finally has to let go. His firstborn son died. His grandfather, who the man who essentially raised him for the majority of his life, died. He has no idea where his father is other than space, but he has no idea if he's alive or dead. Names his second son after his father.
Coop Cooper,
which...
look, the world's ending. We can't make fun of people with shitty names.
But the part that doesn't make sense is that Coop was not his name. His name was Joseph. Coop was just a nickname based off of his last name, and his son gave him his second born a name based off of his nickname.
It is established at the beginning of the movie that this character is not smart enough to do anything but be a farmer.
He is a farmer.
So
I don't know what this movie's trying to say about our farmers.
Yeah.
They are a hardworking, intelligent bunch. But he eventually had to cut ties with his father. It's kind of his therapy, but I almost feel like it made it worse. He's trying to cut ties with a father he has no idea who's even hearing these messages. And I feel like it was almost therapeutic for him to put this out into the ether for his dad to hear. It's easier to grieve once you know that.
Once you accept it.
Yeah. And I don't think Casey Affleck's character accepted it. I think he just did it because he was told it was what he needed to do. I think this is what kind of made him a harder man later. Obviously, not having his father in his life was a big one. Not having that direction, since he was just kind of a dumb kid.
I mean, as a person who has lost people in my life who are still alive, but I never got the closure of goodbye, writing letters, speaking to them in quiet moments, those things can be therapeutic, but it does also hurt the process of finding closure in yourself and letting go. My therapist has told me a few times, like, write a letter to this person and then burn it. Write a letter of goodbye and then let it go. Burn it, rip it up, throw it away, hide it, delete it, whatever you have to do. Because ultimately, having that crutch of always sending letters to somebody that's long gone, it can be harmful for growth and for recovery. But yeah, it does kind of show how, like, we get to see deeply how much Coop leaving affects Murph. Like, we see that it is splashed right across the film most of the time, but we don't get to see that as much with Tom. And so, even what little bits we did get to see, you see a man who lost his father, is trying to do his best in a dying world, and can only do so much, but is failing. And yeah, his life might have been better if his dad had stayed, but then, everybody's lives would have ended. So it just shows the sacrifice that everybody had to go through, willing or not, in order for the world to be saved.
One astronaut we really haven't talked about at all. Well, there's a couple, but Doyle, who was played by Wes Bentley.
Oh, Wes Bentley. They tried so hard to make you a thing.
Every time I see Wes Bentley, no matter what he's in, the only thing I think of is him filming a plastic bag floating in the air.
He was great in American Beauty. God damn you, Kevin Spacey. American Beauty is such a great movie.
But between him, his character, Doyle, the poor guy drowns on the first planet. He went for a swim, decided not to go swimming back to the ship.
Jesus.
And that was the end of Doyle. And then poor Romley, played by David Gyasi, spent 23 years up in a ship orbiting this water planet.
Just by himself.
By himself.
Fuck, that must have been
he
brutal.
slept for a little bit in the beginning, but then spent a number of years. I can't remember the number of years.
Yeah, they don't actually say. He just says that he took a couple long naps, and that was...
And then just decided he couldn't deal with the self of him just putting himself to sleep. He had
to do something.
Yeah, he figured out, he did a lot of math while they were down on that planet. But then even he, unfortunately, he's another astronaut that we lose later.
So, can we talk about surprise Matt Damon?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
You'd say surprise Matt Damon, and it's funny because I think he just loves being a surprise cameo in movies. I looked it up. He's been in almost a dozen different movies where he's popped up as a cameo.
That's delightful. And, don't get me wrong, I think Matt Damon's a perfectly fine human being. I love his acting. I love some of his movies. I don't like some of his movies. I don't like some of his cameos. I do like some of his cameos. This one is fun because he was just... Nobody knew. This was proper surprise Matt Damon. And this isn't a cameo. This is a full part. This is the antagonist of the entire movie, is Dr. Mann, who my first thought about Matt Damon is that this guy is so charismatic and intelligent that he convinced 11 other people to fly off into the stars through a wormhole with him. That this guy
doesn't seem that smart to be able to be allowed to pilot a spaceship by himself.
He doesn't even know how to
he doesn't know how to operate.
Spaceship.
He doesn't know how to operate. This is all built by the same people.
Yeah.
It's all the same system. He should know that if he doesn't have authorization to dock, it's not going to create a good enough seal. He should know that. And the ship's computer, I know he can't hear the people on the surface, but the ship that he's in, the computer is just yelling at him.
Yeah, don't do
this. You're going to die.
And I get that he was desperate, and I get that he was terrified. I mean, this is a man who is marooned on an inhabitable planet. He literally lies to get people to come rescue him.
Yeah, he did not like the fact that he went on he was so sure the planet he was going to was going to be a success, the idea of a suicide mission didn't cross his mind because he was positive this is the future.
Yeah, and the fact that it wasn't.
And then he wasn't, then he was just like, I'm not dying here.
Yeah.
This is not happening. And he cost them so much because of that.
So much. And actually, if you think about it, Anne Hathaway has a line about how she's excited to go out into the stars because there's no evil out there. It's just nature, whether or not it would be dangerous. But she didn't think about the human aspect, which was humans can be evil. And Matt Damon was so fucking evil.
Which, that's another thing. I love when Matt Damon gets to play kind of an antagonist like this, a proper villain. He got to play kind of a villain in The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Which I think I saw like half of once when I was a kid and didn't care for, because I was a kid.
And then, of course, he also kind of played actually, he got to play Loki twice. Actually, he got to play Loki 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Twice with Thor, who, just as Loki's, not doppelganger, but he's playing the character of Loki in a
the
play
actor playing Loki.
In 2 movies, which is, I love Matt Damon as Loki.
Oh, it's so good.
But then he also got to play Loki in Dogma, and he was
Not the same Loki, though.
Not the same Loki,
But
just
still
an
a
angel
Loki,
named
yeah.
Loki, spelled the same way, and he gets to kill some people in that movie.
I didn't find Matt Damon distracting when I saw him at all. The entire time, I was just so curious about how this weak-ass baked potato could...
And he's a doctor. He's not only an astronaut.
Yeah, but he's
a doctor man.
Dr. Man.
Dr. Man.
He's still just a weak-ass baked potato that fucks everything up.
He does look like a baked potato in this movie.
And once again, you get to see TARS and Case just being absolute perfect.
Which I don't think I said earlier. It is so cool with those 2 robot characters. Because they could have, any director with this kind of budget would have easily turned them into just CG characters. But the fact that these were puppets, puppeteered by guys behind them, moving them around.
And they're big puppets,
and
too.
They are big puppets, yeah. For the most part, most of their scenes, they are practical effects.
Somebody on Tumblr described TARS as a giant gay asterisk in space. And that made me laugh so hard. Yeah, it's a great one. After Matt Damon, steals a ship and tries to fly back to the main spaceship, and the just panic attack that is that
The
entire
tension
sequence.
in this whole sequence.
And then when Cooper and Amelia have to dock with the spinning space station, and the music and the spinning and the spinning and the music and everything, and
the dialogue that's being yelled back and forth.
The space station is getting closer to
closer
orbit.
It's about to fall through orbit, and then they'll lose everything.
Yeah, what a crazy fucking
they had to
sequence.
dock and leave the planet's orbit before it crashed. Yeah,
Which was insane. And then
fascinating.
Caveman and I decided to take a break, which was so much needed because this movie is a hard watch. It is an incredible film, but sometimes you need to step away, have a pee, have a shot, have a hug before settling in for what is just an intense 50 minutes of the end of the film. Because it was about an hour into the film, or an hour left into the film, when we decided to take that break. And I'm just saying, it was needed for my soul, so thank you for a shot and a hug. I know we've already talked about it a little bit, but the beauty of that black hole is so breathtaking. And the first time I saw it, it just sucked the air right out of my body. And I was thinking about it yesterday when we were watching this. The only other time that I really vividly remember watching a movie and just being breathless, just having my whole breath stolen away from me, is when the Fellowship is in the mines of Moria and
the music
swells and you finally get to see the inside of Moria for the first real time. And it's so, so beautiful. And so that moment, and then watching the Endurance, this giant ship, look very small as it passes, the light of a black hole, was so beautiful.
The light surrounding the black hole.
Yeah, it's just an incredible, incredible moment. So I've only seen this movie twice, and both times were on our television at home. And it's not a small TV. I mean, it's a pretty decent size. but I haven't seen this movie on the big screen, and I was telling Caveman yesterday that I went into it not wanting to ever watch this movie again, and I came out of it wanting to watch it again, but on the biggest screen that I could possibly find it on.
The ship starts getting pulled into the black hole. They escaped the gravity of one planet, and now they're getting trapped into the gravity of a black hole, which I'm pretty sure is worse than a planet, I've been told.
They concocted the idea of basically a slingshot to try to get the main ship, the Endurant, towards the next planet, the third planet.
Gotta send Anne Hathaway to the next planet.
Yeah,
well,
but
she thinks they're all going.
But in reality, they gotta ditch TARS, sweet boy, off into a black hole. And then Matthew McConaughey reveals that he too has to sacrifice himself in order for Anne Hathaway and for humanity to survive. This was an ultimate sacrifice on his part. And so he does what he needs to do and detaches his own ship from the port, sending her off into places unknown and into places unknown. The whole sequence when the ship disintegrates around him and he has to eject, but he is protected in the vastness of a black hole, but his ship wasn't. I found that very interesting.
Why his ship falls apart because it entered a black hole, but TARS, who's also made out of some kind of mechanical material, and a human being's body are completely fine floating or being sucked through. Ship, no. Robot and male companion, they're fine.
He ends up inside of a tesseract, which at this point,
Thanos?
I'm going to be real honest.
Loki?
I have already cried 4 times. This movie is a lot. When they start to explain what he's in, this weird sort of like dimension, this 5th dimension of time and space folding in on itself, like a bunch of squares. It's a lot, and I didn't understand half of who built it. Apparently future humans built it. I didn't care because I was so emotionally invested at this point and tired of crying.
Was wild. Talk about, like, it got really sci-fi real fast.
It got real sci-fi.
I know a lot of this is still based off of science theories.
Mm-hmm. But the end of this movie is like straight science fiction. Love saves the day.
Yeah, love turns into a
quantifiable thing.
Right, something just as much as gravity.
Yeah.
Coop is in a 3D space inside these future humans' 5th dimension, or 5th dimensional reality of a tesseract, which just starts like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, and then it somehow takes him back to his childhood bedroom.
For a movie that was really grounded in a lot of science, now we're talking about tesseract hypercubes in 5th dimensional space.
Made by future humans who were somehow able to transcend space and time and put Matthew McConaughey behind the bookshelf of his childhood bedroom.
There was a line that I think TARS says while they're floating around the 3D bookcase space. He says, bulk beings from the 5th dimension are closing the tesseract.
That's a pretty fucking metal line.
That's a pretty crazy one. And does this whole third act, is this a little weak? Is this third act a little weak compared to, I don't know, other movies, but also other Christopher Nolan movies? I mean, sometimes he does have issues with his third acts.
Once this movie takes a hard left turn into sci-fi love town, yeah, it gets a little squirrely. But personally, for me, I was so invested emotionally, and I had cried so many times, and I was so broken down by the intensity of this movie, the anxiety of this movie, the agony of this movie, the sadness of this movie, the hope of this movie. Like, I was so broken down at that point that I was like, all right, I don't care. I don't understand it, but I don't care.
It seems like a huge acid trip of a moment that just ends with Coop floating out in space near Saturn until he gets picked up by space rangers.
Yeah, that part was a little odd. The fact that he actually does make it back, that somehow going through the black hole puts him back where he should be.
And great time, not just great time. You almost ran out of oxygen. Our space rangers found you, and we just so happened to Plan A worked. We're off Earth. We're floating in a circular can.
But Plan A worked because while he was in the bookcase tesseract,
the binary stuff that he sent on the watch, and she figured out the equation.
Yeah,
I know, but it all just so very convenient, especially him getting spit out right
Yeah.
in time.
And I think that if it had been a more realistic ending, which is like we never saw him again, I think we'd all be kind of like, oh, bummer. We didn't get to see him reunite
That's
with
how
his
it
kid.
ends?
So, yes, on the one side, in hindsight, we're looking at it going, it's a little cheesy. But on the other side of it, if it was anything else, would it be the movie that we're talking about? Would it be a near perfect film?
He gets picked up by the Space Rangers and he gets to see what
Murph has created.
right, and he thinks the station that he's at is named
After him. Cooper Station.
Cooper Station. And he's
Cougar Town?
Coopersville. It's not named after him. It's named after his daughter, because he doesn't know what a absolutely amazing hero, scientist,
Badass.
and just historically now the Earth, obviously they believe in space travel now. He's introduced to the farm he left.
Which, to me, feels like a really terrible idea.
How much money did they spend just to recreate a farmhouse?
Well, okay, so when Steve Rogers wakes up at the end of the first Avenger, they put him in, like, what seems to be like a 40s-esque, like, room.
Oh, to make him feel better.
To make him feel better,
More comfortable.
Right? And they think that Coop, after spending countless years in space, except for him, was only a short time. You know, it was a short time for him, but a long time for everybody else. What made them think that if he went back to the farm that he left, that somehow that would be okay for him mentally? It just seems like a bad idea. You're in the future, but we're going to stick you into the past.
Where he didn't like.
He didn't like it in the first place.
He didn't
wasn't
like
a fan
it.
of that farm.
He didn't want to be a farmer.
No, he wanted to be in space.
Yeah, but they like, here, back to your farm. And he's like, wait a minute, no,
That was very odd to me. And it's also a museum.
Yeah, it's a museum, which, comes back around to the documentary that we saw at the beginning.
TARS is there because they found TARS floating in space,
They found TARS too, which I love that TARS, especially when at the very, very end of the movie, him and TARS are going off to find Anne Hathaway on their own.
TARS and Coop.
And I kind of want to keep watching that movie.
100% want to know what happens next.
That's the third act I want to watch.
I want to know, do TARS and Coop find Annie Haths? Is there a love story?
It's very Christopher Nolan, just kind of like leave it open. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with Inception. It's
Same
the
thing with all the
Dark
Batman
Knight.
movies. Yeah.
We're just going to leave it open. Here we go.
Fan fiction, here I come. And then we get to the fifth reason that I cried, which is the reunion between
This is
him
always
and
a
Murph.
hard one for me, too.
Because Murph is now in her 90s.
And she has her own children and her own grandchildren and her own great-grandchildren who are all on the station to say goodbye to her because she's dying.
Yeah.
Like, her being, they even said it earlier, her being transported to this station was not healthy for her.
Yeah.
But she wanted to do it.
Because she wanted to see her dad.
She wanted to see
Why
her dad.
didn't they just...
But she gets there.
Oh my God.
And once she sees her dad, she's like, "Hi, Dad. My kids and other family are here, so can you
not watch me die?
Don't watch me die.
Like, hi,
I'm
Dad,
glad I
I
finally got to see you again. You look just the same way."
Yeah.
Like,
I
it's
haven't
really
seen you in 80
anticlimactic.
years.
It's a really anticlimactic.
It is a very anticlimactic reunion. They literally spent like a minute and a half together. But
I get her side
Why
of
didn't they
it.
send Cooper to the station where she was at?
Right. Why does he have to be at that one?
Yeah, why did she have to come to him? Why didn't he go to her? You know what?
I don't
Okay,
know.
I'm starting to see your
It's a little messy.
grievances with the end. It's a little messy. It's one of those things where the script is so emotionally manipulating that you're so broken by the time that they give you any reasoning that you don't think about it. Coop goes off. He doesn't stay on the spaceship, but he steals a space. He steals a little spaceship. He goes off of TARS.
Supposedly, it's only been a few hours for Anne Hathaway's character landing on this planet.
Long enough.
The way
the
way Murph explains it, like they're like, she says to Coop, Anne Hathaway's character is she just got there.
Yeah.
Like somehow she knows what's happening, even though there's no communication between Coop and Murph. But she's essentially like, she's waiting for you. Go to her.
How does she even know that
I don't
was
know.
the choice?
It's like, I don't remember it even being talked about.
No,
that
like,
Anne
how does
Hathaway even lived. Like,
yeah.
She doesn't even know that like Dominic Cooper or
Wes Bentley.
Wes Bentley.
Do you think it's because that she's dying and suddenly she's one with the Force?
She's seeing her
She's seeing everything, everywhere, all at once. But yeah,
That's essentially the movie. I mean,
Yeah, that's
he
the movie.
leaves. He leaves. We see Anne Hathaway.
she takes off her helmet and breathes
and
the
she's
air.
like, it's a planet
if
we
you-
can all live on now.
But if
People bomb it now.
When the camera pans, though, it shows her setup. It shows, her
I don't think-
already establishing a colony on the planet.
I don't
so
think
it's been
her
more than a
love.
couple hours.
I don't think her love is there anymore.
No, he's dead. You see the
I think there's a grave.
their grave. Yeah.
Yeah. She's setting up, getting ready to people bomb because
Yeah.
she doesn't know Plan A worked.
No, and surprise, Cooper's gonna come get her. I want to see that movie.
Yeah, right.
But still,
Come on, Nolan.
regardless of all of that,
Interstellar 2.
this movie is perfect.
Oh
It's-
no, we're just nitpicking and talking about it for the podcast's
Yeah,
sake.
it's such
But
a
we still love it.
beautiful
I mean,
film.
we might as well just say it, Maggie. What did you give this film out of 5 stars?
Oh, absolutely 5 stars out of 5 stars. This is the best movie that we've watched so far. Is it my favorite? No. But it's the best in terms of everything that it is. Like, this is the best movie that we have watched so far from beginning to end. For all the production, the score, the script, even if it is kind of silly. I don't know, this movie is... Like, I didn't want to watch it again because I didn't want to feel those emotions again. But then when I felt them, I was like, I'm so glad I'm feeling these. I don't know. I think that this is a phenomenal
I
film.
don't even watch this movie that often, but I'm
Oh, it is
always
not a rewatchable
glad
movie.
I do when I put it on. I can let a couple of years go by without watching this movie again, but when I do put it in, I will enjoy myself. I would give this movie 4.5 stars, and that only half is just because of the third act.
See, it
It's
doesn't
not
bother me as
like
much.
5 out of 5 is a perfect film, and that's the only imperfect part for me personally. That's my own personal review of Interstellar.
Like, spoilers, there are some movies further down on the list that I care about more. I care about the characters. I love the characters. I mean, we're going to be recording Into the Spider-Verse here soon, and y'all are going to listen to a girl rant about how much she deeply loves Spider-Ham. That movie's absolutely going to get 5 out of 5 stars for me because it is
spoiler alert, 5 out
one
of
of
5.
my favorite films.
I'm already going to say, I haven't given any film 5 out of 5 yet, but Spider-Verse 5 out
Yeah,
of 5.
absolutely.
So you
But-
guys could skip it, I guess.
It's different for... No, don't skip it. Oh my God, don't you dare. Listen to it. Listen to me cry about Nicolas Cage.
Oh,
for fuck's
guys, we're
sake.
going to nerd out so
We're
much.
gonna nerd out so hard.
Catch next week's episode of Movie Mingle, where we talk about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
It's gonna be epic.
Nothing else needs to be said
Yeah.
about that. So, Maggie,
Yes, Caveman?
I've got 2 questions for you.
Yay.
Number 1. Would this movie have been better with Oscar Isaac in it?
Yes, absolutely. His most perfect face and most perfect beard and most perfect hair would have 100% made this movie a 6 out of 5, for sure.
So then second question is, which character would he have played?
I would have liked some surprise Oscar Isaac instead of surprise Matt Damon. Let's be honest.
You know?
It's a short role, but he would
At
have
first
done
I was like,
wonders with it.
At first I was like, Oscar Isaac gets Coop, and then no, not
No.
Coop. And I was like, well, maybe
don't
Oscar Isaac
think-
could be Casey Affleck, but him as like you open up the potato oven on the on the ice planet, and out pops steamy Oscar Isaac.
Oh my God, that is a daydream.
Maybe a
of
little
mine.
shirtless.
Ooh.
Doesn't need to be. Yeah.
No, he should be. Yeah, and then it would explain how that character had enough charisma and intelligence to convince people to leave the universe for, because I too would follow Oscar Isaac into the stars. So yeah, it would have been, we were robbed. And it would have been a short time and I would have cried when he died, but oh, we were robbed.
Hey Minglers, it's time for the box office news. And of course, who else but Godzilla and Kong with a staggering $87 million for the first weekend, and that's just domestically. Worldwide, for its first opening 3-day weekend, 3.5 I guess if you count Thursday, but $202 million for Godzilla and Kong, or Godzilla X Kong, or GXK. It depends on who you ask. In second place, we have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire with another $2 million. Third place, Kung Fu Panda 4 with another $2 million. Just under $2 million, but I like to round up. And then we've got Dune Part 2 with another $1.48 million. And I know I have picked on Arthur the King in the past without ever seeing the movie, without really caring much about it. It's Marky Mark. I really don't care. But to its credit, Arthur the King, even though I think it's in like 6th place this weekend, after this weekend's box office numbers, but it has finally reached the $20 million mark after being in theaters for almost 20 days. $20 million in 20 days. I mean, I wish I could make $1 million a day. However, the movie cost $20 million to make. Some sources say it cost a lot more than that. Maybe twice as much. I will probably watch it one day, and we will have to review it. And that's this week's box office news.
And that is this week's episode of Movie Mingle. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed us talking and ranting at length. That is the point of this podcast, is for Caveman and I to just have fun and watch these movies and then rant about them in our nerdy ways. We hope you enjoyed yourself. Please leave us some reviews on the various podcast platforms that you're listening on. 5 stars, preferably, but we would love to hear what you think. You can always reach us at movieminglepod@gmail.com. We are on Instagram at movieminglepod, and we're also on Letterboxd at movieminglepod, where you can follow along my reactions to all of these films. And yeah, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Have a great day, and go mingle.
Are you an effective team?
We are an effective team.
Let them fight.
How did you just do that?
I'm a really good lawyer.
Here on Caladan, we ruled by air power and sea power. On Arrakis, we need to cultivate desert power.
Welcome, Mr. Beach. What's that bar? I'm a little confused.
Well, we wouldn't want that, would we?
I don't want to brag, but I will. I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
What is that?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Toga, 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 toga.